Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Ryan Crossley Show, a brand new show on Radio La Roca 106.3 FM. I am Ryan Crossley, and it is so good to start this program, to finally get it going. Every single week, Wednesdays from 9 to 10 a.m., I'm just going to take some time and try and cover some items in the news and in our world, things that are going on, and cover them from, a Christian perspective, and also give my thoughts, my opinions, my take on different things. And so I just want to welcome you to the very first Ryan Crossley Show, Wednesday mornings, 9 to 10 a.m., September 1st, 2021. What a joy and a privilege to get this going. And what a time that we are living in, that we need more than ever before. We need voices. I just want to say that if you're asking why is a pastor going to do a show like this, I'll tell you exactly why. It's because I believe God has given us a voice. And God has given us a voice, first of all, to preach the gospel of salvation to everyone that would hear it. Everyone needs to be saved. But secondly, I also believe that our Christian values and our morals and that which this country was established on and founded on and built on, as much as that's trying to be erased, it's unbelievable. We are fighting for every tenet of what this country was built on like never, ever before. And that's why I'm going to be on here every Wednesday from 9 to 10 a.m. I want to add my voice to so many others that are trying to be a light in the darkness. They're trying to be the city on a hill. They're trying to be the salt of the earth. And I believe that the church cannot just simply lock itself in its own four walls and say, well, we shouldn't get involved in any of that stuff. It doesn't concern us. I think that's a hard-pressed thing to say when you can look in the Word of God and see over and over how God placed men and women in very high-profile political circles so that they could accomplish something for the people of God. Think about a young lady like Esther, who at a very young age was placed by God in a very powerful circle politically, and she was able to be a voice when nobody else could have spoken for the people. Think about Daniel and the 3 Hebrew children who were a voice for righteousness and stood up for what they believed for. Let's just put that out there for all of you that are listening. They stood up for what they believed for. Their lives were on the line. The furnace was heated up 7 times hotter, and they still stood for what they believed for. They did not hide in a corner. They did not kowtow down. They stood for what they believed for in a political arena. I want you to understand that. It was in a political, religious arena. And if you think politics is not in and of itself a religion, it definitely is, with the agendas and the policies that are promoted from both aspects. And so we need to get a God view and a God concept, and we need to get a right perspective. We are starting this show with that purpose in mind. I just want to be a voice. I'm tired of just watching and listening and not saying something. I'm not asking you to agree with me on this show. You will not always agree with me, because the way these kind of things work is we see what's happening, we see the news, we see the things that are happening in our world, we analyze them, we give facts, and then we give our point of view, and hopefully we're given that point of view with a God concept and led by the Spirit. And if we ever needed to be a voice, this is the time when we need a voice. I believe that during the whole COVID pandemic, the enemy has tried to shut down moral voices, shut down, censor, if you please, censor voices of reason, censor voices of truth, censor voices that would say something different than the status quo. Because sometimes truth is not popular, and sometimes truth makes people angry because it doesn't go along with their agenda. So I'm glad to be able to do this. I'm going to enjoy it. Today we have something very, very special for you. Not too long ago, there was another person, a mom, who decided to stand up and be a voice. That's what she did. She said, I am going to speak up. And so at a school board meeting, she stood up and she became a voice. I doubt that she ever imagined that her little few minutes of speaking there would go viral, but thank God it did. And Keisha King's voice was heard around the world and definitely here in the United States of America. And so a little bit later on in the program today, we have a full interview with Keisha King. We're so thankful that she accepted our invite onto the program. What a way to start, to be able to get somebody like her. And I believe that over the next weeks, months, and years, if the Lord allows it, we're going to be able to connect with a lot of people that are a voice in our time. I do want to take time out right now just to say how much we are praying for the military families of these 13 that have lost their lives. It is unbelievable to me how their lives have been just in a way senselessly lost. I know that they were doing their duty. They were doing what they were called to do and what they signed up to do. They were trying to facilitate the salvation of lives, the rescue of lives. But if you want to listen to the families themselves, several of the families, I was listening yesterday to one of the mothers that called into the Wilcow Majority Show, also a father that gave his expressions on Fox News about his meeting with President Biden and what he expressed to him, saying it did not go well because of what he felt he needed to express to the president. We need to pray for these families, because when your child signs up to the military, you know that they are risking their lives. They're putting it in the hands of the defense of our country. And you want to feel like, I think as a parent, as tragic as it can be, as horrible as it can be, as much of a loss as it can be, there's something about knowing that your son or your daughter gave their lives valiantly. But there's also something to be said in feeling like they gave their lives in a worthy purpose and a worthy cause under the right kinds of directions and circumstances. And if you listen to the families right now, you are going to hear in their voices, in their words, the frustrations that this was unnecessary and this was senseless. It's not that we didn't need to be out of Afghanistan. I personally, I'll tell you right now, I believe that you cannot just fight an endless war forever. But if you are going to pull people out, if you are going to evacuate, and I'm not saying anything different than what other conservative talk radio people are saying, or those that are on the news that are of a conservative lean are saying, I think that most agree that you can't just fight forever. But if you're going to do something like this, you have to go through a process, and you have to do it in such a way to minimize any kind of negative impact. This could have been done it was done in the absolute worst, most disastrous, most unorganized way possible, ignoring the council, ignoring those minds that know how to do this, ignoring all of that just simply because you wanted to do it by a certain day. Like somebody said yesterday, I was reading, they said Biden kept his word with Afghanistan or the Taliban, but did not keep his word to Americans. And that is so true. And so as we pray for these families, we need to pray for them because I know they're struggling with the senseless loss. This could have been done in a much better way. In fact, and I'm not going to say I'm not going to throw this all on one side or the other. President Trump wanted to take our troops out. He wanted to end the war, and some opposed that. But here's the difference: when he was opposed, and when the voices that knew about these things, that knew what the repercussions would be, when they spoke up and they said it's not a good thing to do it that way, we need to think about this. I will say this: he did not do it understanding that the repercussions and understanding that the fallout and what could end up happening would be tragic. So that much can be said. In this case, it just seems like it was barreled ahead, did not matter. Like one of the mothers said, it seems like it's all been done for to make a timeline for a photo op. I don't know if that's the case or not. I understand the frustration of the mom, but it is tragic, and we need to really pray, because now it's not just what is lost. And I want to get to this interview with Keisha King, so I can't give all the details that I would normally. And I know this is the first program, but it's not just how America looks in the world's eyes right now. I don't know if you know this or not, but only two embassies, two countries did shut down their embassies, Russia and China. And here we are struggling with this exit the way that we have. And the photo apps now of the Taliban on our Humvees and our military equipment. I mean, it's unimaginable. It's something that I'm having a hard time just wrapping my head around it. Seeing Taliban fighters in our soldiers' uniforms on our equipment, it just absolutely blows my mind, the incompetence that has led to this. And I'm not talking about the military. The military is not incompetent. The thing about it, I was talking to my wife about this, and the thing about it is the military is trained to follow orders. They're going to follow the orders that they are given, no questions asked, because that's what they do. That's what makes our military so powerful, is they follow orders. And so they're doing what they have been asked to do. But from the very top, it's just a disaster. And I just can't believe everything that's been left in the hands of the Taliban. And we need to pray, not just because what has happened, not just because how we look now, not just because of all those things, but what is coming now. What are we going to be facing now? I cannot believe that we have left in the hands of a terrorist organization, that we have left in their hands military might and power and weaponry that they would have never been able to get their hands on in any other way. It's just something that I'm having a hard time with. But we will be talking a little bit more about these kinds of things. I know from week to week there's so much that happens, but my goal on this show, and I appreciate you just giving me the leeway to express myself. And like I said, you're not going to agree with me all the time, maybe never. But my point is, try to be a voice in the middle of this. We've got to pray. We've got to pray for the people that have been left behind in Afghanistan. We're hearing reports of the door-to-door searches. We are seeing videos where in the video, in the background, you can hear the gunshots. I can't even begin to imagine what people feel like that are holed up in their house, not knowing when the door is going to be knocked on and not knowing how they can get out, because there's no way out now. There's thank God for there's people that are trying through special ops, through ways that don't even include the government now, because we're out trying to find a way to get people out. And we need to, more than ever, somebody needs to be held accountable for this kind of stuff. If you had any, I want you to just think about this. If you had something on this level occur in a company, occur in a university, occur in any other kind of realm of leadership, there would have to be accountability all over the place. There would be investigations. There would be all kinds of things that would be done to figure out what on earth happened, what went wrong, how could this have been so mismanaged. But unfortunately, nobody is being held accountable yet. I hope that they are. I'm praying for our representatives and our senators that they would be able to bind together and do something, because this is a world embarrassment, the way that this has gone, and it's a tragedy above it all, because lives have been lost. So we're going to be talking a little bit more about that, and praying that God strengthens these men and women, and then I pray for those that are stuck behind enemy lines, that they are able to get out. And it's just something that it's so hard to comprehend and say that this was the best way. No, it was not the best way. So I thank you for joining me on these Wednesdays. Today, I would love to talk a lot more about what's going on in Afghanistan and give all the details. But we do have this interview that I want to share with you, because in the middle of everything that's going on, there's so much going on that an hour is not enough time. But in the middle of everything that's going on, we cannot lose focus of the things that we're also dealing with here at home. And one of the greatest attacks right now that we're dealing with at home is the attack on the future generation. I have 4 boys, and I am covering them with prayer, and I am trying to teach them and bring them up the right way so they understand how things should be, and not just simply swallow everything that's being shoved down their throats in our society, especially with the different agendas that exist today. And so I'm so thankful for people that stand up, and they stand up for what is right, and they stand up for what is moral. And you're always going to have people that oppose you when you take a stand. Let me just say this before we go to the interview with Keisha King. A lot of people will never do the kind of thing that I'm doing, because they would rather be middle of the road. That way I don't offend those on this side, and I don't offend those on that side. And we are not out to offend anybody. But the bottom line is, you have to take a stand for something. And I believe in taking a stand for things that are based on Christian morals and values. And even though it might not be popular with everybody else today, I still believe what I believe, and I'm going to stand on that. And that applies not just to the 4 walls of my church. Folks, our beliefs are not limited to the 4 walls of our church. Our beliefs are what we live our lives by. They are the moral code. They are the ethical rules. They are the values that are our foundation, that we live by. And if we don't stand for that, what are we going to give the next generation? That's why I'm on here. I want to give something to the next generation. I want my kids to know that Dad spoke up, and that we were a voice in the midst of chaotic and turbulent times. Well, thank you so much for hearing my intro. We will be here every Wednesday, 9 to 10. And I want to go now to an interview that I did with Keisha King. What a wonderful person. And I hope that this blesses you, and I hope that you pay attention to some things that we are dealing with, and why we need to step up, and why we need to. It's happening, folks. If we don't stand up, we're going to get steamrolled. So you better stand up and say something. More voices that will bind together can actually change things. If we are quiet, we are complicit by our silence. So we need to speak up and make sure that people know that not everybody is swallowing whatever is being fed down the pipe. We've got to stand up. One of the purposes of this program is to get you to think for yourself, use the brain that the good Lord gave you, use it for don't just accept everything. Even on this program, don't just accept everything that I say. Think about it, think it through, and let God guide you, and let something begin to come. Not just regurgitating everything that you hear, but having your own mind, and to be able to have it would be nice to get back to some common sense. I've always said this. I've always said God's truth is not too far from common sense. God is a common sense God. And so I want you to enjoy this interview and learn from it, and maybe it will inspire you. And we look forward to these Wednesdays on the Ryan Crossley Show. God bless you. Let's listen to this interview with Keisha King. So happy to have Keisha King on our program. She has become a rock star ultimately in the news, unexpected to her, I'm sure. But this is probably for our radio show, Rock Church Radio, or La Roca Radio on 106.3 FM. It's exciting for us to have Keisha King with us. She stood up for something in a moment and never expected, I believe, for it to cause in her life what it did. So first of all, tell us about that moment. Even before you tell us who you are, tell us about that moment, why you did it, what motivated you, and that mom moment.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's always an honor to, get the story out and tell what moms are going through, what parents are going through. So I was at the Board of Education. This was back in June, and they were having a hearing to discuss critical race theory, where Governor DeSantis was considering banning it, which he did, thankfully. And I just basically said that, we were reverting to a time in America that we had fought so hard to get out of, Black people, white people, Hispanics, a lot of people have fought in America to move us to that more perfect union, so to try to divide us now by race and, all this stuff, it's ridiculous, because we've all put blood, sweat, and tears, throughout history to make America better, and we've done that, and it's like, right. Why are you trying to teach our children that that's not...
It's going backwards.
Good. And we're going backwards, exactly. And so I just felt, that I had to stand up and say something. It was not only affecting other parents, but it affected me personally with my own children. And so I was just very...
How many children do you have in school?
I have two daughters. I have one that's in public school and one that's in private.
Wonderful. Well, I know I've got four. They're all in school. I'm very thankful that they're in a very good private school. But, it is something to where education is changing to where it seems to no longer be education, but more indoctrination of any kind of leftist idea, any kind of, and sometimes it's almost something has to get to a boiling point before you realize, if I don't say something, there's going to be a fundamental change for the rest of the generations. So you stood up that day, and everybody can go on YouTube, I'm sure, and see the video. What I think some people fail to understand is what critical race theory really is and what it teaches. And so I would like for you to kind of explain that, because, what has happened, this is just my point of view, but I think it's correct. What has happened is people hear the words, but they don't understand what it means. So, for example, even like Black Lives Matter, well, we all believe every life matters, but they don't understand what the end game is. With critical race theory, well, nobody wants to be accused of being racist. So it seems like this might be good, but they don't understand that it actually makes it is actually pro-racism instead of anti. So can you explain to our listeners that haven't taken the time, because a lot of people don't take the time, explain to our listeners that haven't taken the time to understand what critical race theory really teaches?
Sure. So I think one of the first things we have to understand is that teachers are not teaching children critical race theory at the collegiate level. So they're not saying, there's no critical race theory book, or they're not going through the tenets of racism. How it works out in a classroom is through racial sensitivity, meaning like they pick apart your identity group. So if you're white, if you're black, if you're Asian, if you're Hispanic, or Native, whatever it is. And for instance, white folks, they'll say, okay, what are you going to do? How are you going to use your whiteness to help society or something like that? I mean, it takes this approach that whiteness is bad, automatically, just by virtue of, automatically, and that, if you're black, you are oppressed. So if you're white, you're an oppressor, and if you're black or anything else, you're oppressed. And that's vital in one of the first tenet of critical race theory in one of the official critical race theory books by Richard Delgado. His first tenet is that racism is embedded into the DNA of America, and there is nothing you can do to remove it. So essentially, there's no forgiveness, there's no repentance, there's no hope, there's nothing you can do to eradicate it. And so what they have determined is that you have to be racist basically on the other end. So you have to be racist against white folks and uplift other people by virtue of their skin color or even their intersectionality, which is a whole other thing.
Right, that's a whole other discussion.
But it's ingrained into critical race theory as well, because Kimberly Crenshaw, who was a professor at UCLA, this was one of her contributions, so to speak, to the critical race theory idea, is that not only are we going to separate you by race, but also by, your sexual orientation, your gender and things like that. So it's a large concept, and it's a lot to understand. It really is, but it's vital that we understand it so we can recognize it when we see it. Right.
I think that it's one of the most dangerous things that can happen, and that is to, like you explained so well, just by virtue of your skin color when you're born, or where you're born, because it starts affecting everything, not just your whiteness, your blackness, your brownness, but now it's your socioeconomic status. It is, your upbringing. It's your gender, and what's happening, I think that's so dangerous is it's what I was saying at the beginning. I think people think that, well, hey, they don't take time to understand the destructiveness of it. And so we need to teach kids about racism and that racism exists. What they don't understand is actually it's a racist doctrine, because it pits people against each other, which is what racism is. When Martin Luther King Jr., for example, I think he would roll over in his grave to know that everything that he fought for now is, just listen to his I Have a Dream speech, and he is saying, I have a dream that when black children and white children, there's not going to be this distinction. So what are the dangers? What are the dangers? I know you've explained it a little bit, but what are the dangers of critical race theory? What's the end game if we let this go on?
So the end game for critical race theory and ideologies like it is Marxism, just to be quite honest. Yeah. It comes from a Marxist. Exactly. So we know that Marxism promoted the idea that there was the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. The the proletariat being the working class, the poor, and the bourgeoisie, the elite. And he wanted to pull down that structure. Well, they didn't have much success in that regard. And so a guy came along by the name of Antonio Gramsci, and also the Frankfurt School in Germany, where they wanted to get that, see the revolution that they weren't able to see with classical Marxism, I guess. Right. And so what they did was they started teaching cultural Marxism, where they started getting into the culture. So institutions, organizations, not, in our world, in America, nonprofits and the public school systems, all of these institutions, they started to infiltrate these ideas. And it's dangerous because, America was unique specifically because we wanted to be able to have individual freedoms.
Right.
And
all men.
The God-given right to pursue life, liberty, and happiness. And everyone's life, liberty, or happiness, that idea is not the same for everyone. So you have to have this individual freedom. Well, Marxism focuses on a collectivism. So they need everybody in their grievance group to, pound the table about the same thing. And it removes your self-agency. You have to be a part of these groups. Hence, blacks, whites, gender stuff, the LGBTQ, everybody's in their little boxes, and it starts this war against each other, primarily everyone against the white man, the white, straight, Christian, all of these, their idea of what is.
It's amazing. And then there's a couple things I want to mention there. What happens then is if people buy into this, then they become so government dependent because it's okay. We classify you're classified in your group. You're defined by that, the way we define it, as far as they're concerned. And now we're going to be the great saviors that's going to help you. You've got to depend on us for X, Y, and Z, and which is the end game of Marxism and socialism is where you are dependent on a government for anything good or anything that you can accomplish in your life, but it's going to be limited. Where if we have our individual freedoms, that's why capitalism is hated by so many that are socialist. But capitalism and liberty, which is the tenets of our Constitution, is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Nobody can stop you from being the most successful person you can be, no matter your race, no matter even your level of education. I've seen people that didn't have the same opportunities as others become multimillionaires because they had an entrepreneurial spirit or something about them. So it is so dangerous. I think it pits, especially in schooling, it will pit kids against each other. That kids are the most non-racist people on the planet. Nobody, I can't remember who said this the other day, nobody is born racist. That is taught to them. That is taught to them. And so the place where we definitely don't need that being taught is in school. And it's so valuable, Keisha, when somebody like you stands up. I'm a white heterosexual male Christian. I'm a pastor, for goodness sakes. So I stand up and say something. Well, yeah, you're the privileged class that you were born that with. Well, they don't know my story. But when somebody like you stands up, it's like it's unexpected and it's powerful. You are so powerful because of. You as a woman, as an African-American woman that is speaking out, you're powerful because, wait, she shouldn't be voicing this because you don't fit their mold. You don't fit their class. So what doors have opened? What have you seen change for you? What's going on now? I thought I heard you were maybe running or thinking about running for office. No, I'm not prophesying here. Maybe you need to.
No.
But what are the doors that have opened? What's happened?
Sure. I mean, I've certainly had a lot of, calls just for media hits and things like that. So that has been a blessing. Just to get the word out and just to let people know, number one, this is wrong. And this is harmful not only to children, but it's harmful to our entire nation.
Right.
Number two, that just because all Black folks don't think alike.
Right. That's the whole thing we're talking about. They think all white folks think alike. They think well, I'll tell you what, right now, for example, I pastor a Spanish church. Well, a lot of people are like, well, all the Mexicans. No, I've got a lot of them aren't from Mexico. A lot of them from every culture is different. So don't do that,
Right.
But go ahead. I'm sorry.
But I've also had, people think that I, all of a sudden making just like all this money or something like that. I'm not.
No.
Trust me, I'm not. I do have a political consulting company that we help different candidates with their elections or with their campaigns and different organizations with their, ads and stuff. But I've been in marketing for a long time, so I help with media marketing and communications.
That's what you do then.
That's what I do in my everyday life. So I mean, it's certainly helped with exposure. But that wasn't my goal. I had no idea that would go viral. I mean, that wasn't I had been saying this.
You were standing up for your kids.
Down it. I was.
Right.
And it's like I've been saying this for months down at my, in front of the school board. So I really didn't think I was doing anything.
You didn't feel like you were being a hero.
No, I didn't at all. But I just pray that it continues to bring awareness and that more parents are really digging into what they're pushing on our children. Because it's not just critical race theory.
No.
It is, it is government overreach. And to one of our most precious resources, our children. And I mean, for me, that it was a line too far. I mean, we have already been, the government is literally in everything. They tell you what kind of light bulbs that you have to use at this point. And this was just a line too far.
Yeah. I think that, I read a book years ago called The Marketing of Evil. And it shook me to the core because I realized that this was back in the 60s, 70s. They did a study where certain things were happening in society that they knew that if they didn't spin it the right way, if they didn't become the victims through it all, then it would be the nail in the coffin. So they had a long game plan. And I remember reading that they said we need to get into the Hollywood media. It needs to be their point of view needs to be out there. And then the other was we need to get into the education system. And that's what we're fighting as parents. As parents, we're fighting the fact that we were raised on literature, math, science, what people need to learn to have the basic foundations for success in their lives. But now we're fighting a different battle. We're fighting a battle of ideologies and a battle of Marxist ideas, especially in our colleges. We kind of have given up on the colleges at this point because they're so liberal, but God knows we've got to fight for elementary school and middle school and high school. I think one of the things, and maybe I'd like you to reflect on or talk about this for a minute, when you stood up, and you're not the only one now. I think I've seen videos all over of parents they're fed up. They are fed up with it. But you give inspiration to every normal mom out there that says, I've got to say something. And my wife and I, sometimes you feel helpless because the machine is so big and so powerful and so much money. You feel helpless. But when someone like you stands up, you give every mom a voice. So what can people do, just like what you did? What can people do that you've also done, but you feel, okay, this is helping, this is making a difference? What can the normal mom out there do?
Number one, don't be passive about it. Don't think, oh, this will just go away. It's just a little shakeup right now. They'll get over it and it'll be fine. If you're paying attention, and I know you have to, there's so many paying attention.
Right.
They're not stopping. I don't think anyone could have imagined that they would be mandating an experimental, and I know this is kind of off topic, but I don't know.
You and I are on the same page on this one, believe me.
I don't think that they would have assumed that the government will be mandating an experimental vaccine. Now, if you want to take it, that's on you, but mandating it,
forcing it
so forcefully, this quickly, amongst society. I mean, we have in New York City already vaccine passports. And there are so many people that are like, oh, great, this is fine. We'll just get back to normal. Yeah. They are not stopping. Mm-hmm. So we have to realize they're on a mission. Yes. This is not just about critical race theory. This is not just, it's not just about COVID. This is a much bigger agenda. And, maybe, God is in control. Yeah. God is sovereign and he is in control. Right. And so at the end of the day, I rest in that. However, I know that we are supposed to, because the Bible Jesus told us to occupy until he comes.
That's right.
And so as a believer, that is a call to not only evangelize, but also to fight for the will of God to be done, to fight for the kingdom of heaven.
That's exactly right.
On this side of
right here.
And so, right here, and even if you're not a believer, you still have to protect your children.
Right.
You still have these precious gifts of your children that you must protect. And so, I just feel if you have to stand up, go to your school board meetings, look at the curriculum that is it's all of it is public information. Go on these websites, look at what's coming down the pipeline. Go to your school board meetings, go to your city council meetings. Get involved. I'm a co-chair of Moms for Liberty. They could go to momsforliberty.org and sign up there. We have different chapters that are popping up all over the place and are being successful. The more we go out and stand up to them, believe it or not, they back down. They do. They will back down because we're still America and we still have the power. This is still we the people. We have to use it.
Yes, and I think, for years there's been talked about a silent majority. Well, we can't be the silent majority anymore. As Christians, and you said it, and I'm so glad you said it, I have this morning show, and I'm a pastor, and there are people, as a pastor, you really shouldn't get involved. I have to get involved. There's a story in the Bible. Yeah, there's a story in the Bible, I think it was of a king, and he basically said this. He said, listen, it was chaos, it was pandemonium, things were going bad. And he basically said, as long as there's peace in my day, I'm okay. And God reprimanded him for that. No, you've got kids. And we have to fight, not so that there's just peace in our day, but, with all that's going on, the infrastructure bills they're passing, all the money. It took us George Washington to George Bush to get to $6-7 trillion of debt. It's only taken us from him to now to go to almost 30. What are we going to leave our kids? We've got to fight. And talk about controversy. There was nobody more controversial than Jesus Christ himself. He bucked the trend. He bucked even the religious politics of that day. And I just thank you for speaking up. And so what is Moms for Liberty? Help us understand what Moms for Liberty is, because we might have some moms listening that want to get involved.
Sure. So Moms for Liberty was started by Tina Deskovich and Tiffany Justice. And it actually started more with the mask because, they have children that were negatively affected by all the mask wearing. So they wanted to stand up. Mine too, especially my youngest one. They both hate it, but the youngest one is a special needs child. And she didn't speak until just a couple of years ago, about 3 years ago in school. She would talk at home, but she wasn't talking in school. And she was a late talker anyway. But she needs to see lips, and she needs to be comfortable with her own freedom of, her voice and getting.
It's a natural development of a child. A child has to see, is what they're saying being received? Is what they're saying being transmitted? And to not see that, and really, I mean, you're going to know me now, what I'm going to say. The whole mass thing to me is so Marxist anyway, because it's nobody has their own identity. You're just a number. You're just an object there. So anyway, back to Moms for Liberty.
You no longer even have a face.
No, you don't.
You no longer have a face. You're just this,
you're just this object there. Yeah, you're just this person. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's very dehumanizing. And especially when kids are not as affected, by this virus, I really think that it is a disservice to our children. But just for as far as Moms for Liberty, just so people can know, they started with that mission, and it once they started looking into that, they discovered all these other overreaching issues that were happening in schools. So people just started coming into the organization sort of with their own bad experiences with school. So we realized we had a lot more in common, than we realized. And so Moms for Liberty was created, and, we've just been growing all over the nation, and I'm super proud to be a part of it. And if people want to get involved, like I said, go to momsforliberty.org.
All right, momsforliberty.org. Write that down. We'll put it on the screen here so that people can see it. Is there anything else that you're doing or involved in that people can support, be a part of? I always want to get, it's one thing to talk about things, it's another thing to become active. And so are there any other things that in these last, this last year or the time that you've been a lot more active in this, is there other things that you are doing or know about that you can recommend to people to get involved in and make a difference?
Sure. So with my company, kingconsultingco.com, I help with candidates and different organizations promote their candidacy or their different events and things like that. Because another thing we have to get people that are not serving our best interests out of office. If they are not, elected officials that are doing what is right by what we want, because they work for us, we need to get them voted out. And so I wanted to help candidates who my values aligned with get in office, because a lot of times we have people in there that they're just not working in our best interest, but instead working for themselves. And so I do that through kingconsultingco.com, so you can find me there. And if you need any help with your campaigns and things, let me know about that. And also, if I may, one more organization, Momsforamerica.net. They're having a big event in Orlando, October 1st through the 3rd. And it's going to be all about, how to empower yourselves. It's for moms or grandparents, grandmothers, how to empower yourself, how to get educated on the issues that are going on. There are some great speakers. Congressman Burgess Owens is going to be there. Sam Sorbo is going to be there. Kimberly Fletcher, who's the founder. I mean, there's Charlie Kirk is going to be there. There are a lot of people that are attending this event, so I would really encourage people to go and register for that too.
So let's just clear it up for people. So momsforliberty.org or com?
Org.
Momsforliberty.org. Then we've got momsforamerica.net, and then Kingdom, and then King Consulting Co. Right?
.com.
.com. All right. We'll get them all up there. I love it because people need to know where to go and what to do. Well, as parents, we've got to keep fighting this battle. We've got to keep being a voice. I do believe there's so much of America that is just fed up, absolutely fed up with everything that's going on. If there's one thing that I can say about my wife and I were talking about this. I think so many things. We're both spiritual people. We're believers, and I think that what has happened is things that were hidden under the surface for so many years. When Trump came in office, whether you liked him or not, he exposed everything. And so in those 4 years, everything they had kind of been able to operate in a hidden way. It kind of all came to the surface, and now we're dealing with it.
Yeah.
And so
That is so true. I think you're absolutely right.
right. I think a lot of this stuff was going on, and it just maybe we weren't as aware, and God
Right.
used somebody to expose it all. And now we've got to fight the good fight of faith, and we've got to get good people back in office. Thank God we have a great governor here in Florida. We got to pray for him and make
Yes.
sure
Absolutely.
that God can use him and protect him, because he is being attacked so strongly. And we're going to pray for you, that God protect you and keep you and your girls, because I know that when you stand up for something like that, you also become a target. And but God is fighting for us. So any last words you want to give our listeners before we sign off here? I thank you so much. It's been an honor, one of the most special interviews we've done. But anything you would like
Oh my
to
God.
say to our listeners here, kind of as a last word before we sign off?
I would like to remind everyone that those that are for us are greater than those that are
Come on.
against us.
Yes.
So don't be afraid. Keep up the fight. God is on our side. He
Yes.
is the best advocate that we have an advocate with the Father.
Yes, we do.
And so I just want to encourage everyone to stay encouraged. Put on that full armor of the Lord and go forward in faith.
Amen. Well, I appreciate you so much coming on this show. Hopefully
Thank
it's
you so much.
just the first time, not the last. And anytime you feel like, hey, I need to get the word out on something, we'll have you on here and be able to communicate to the audience, and keep fighting the good fight of faith for us, Keisha. And we thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much.
All
Thank
right.
you for having me.
All right. God bless you.